Listen closely, my friends. There is a version of you that the world has never met. Not because it doesn't exist, but because every time it begins to emerge, you interrupt it. You explain yourself too early. You defend yourself too quickly. You announce your plans before they have earned the right to exist. And without realizing it, you trade real power for temporary attention. The tragedy is not that you lack potential. The tragedy is that you keep leaking it. Think about the strongest people you have ever admired. They were never obsessed with proving themselves every single day. They didn't rush to answer every insult. They didn't explain every decision. They didn't stop their work just because someone doubted them. While everyone else was busy talking, they were quietly becoming the person nobody could ignore. By the time the world noticed them, the work had already been done. Modern life teaches the exact opposite. Every notification tells you to react. Every platform rewards the fastest opinion. Every argument invites you to defend yourself. Every small achievement whispers, "Show everyone." Little by little, you are trained to believe that visibility is the same as progress. It isn't. Visibility feeds the ego. Silence feeds the future. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before the world became addicted to attention. In the middle of war, surrounded by betrayal, carrying the weight of an empire on his shoulders, he never wrote reminders about impressing people. He wrote reminders about mastering himself, because he knew a truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The greatest battles are never fought in front of other people. They are fought inside the few silent seconds between emotion and response, between impulse and discipline, between the version of you that wants immediate satisfaction and the version that is willing to build something that lasts. Everything you become is decided inside those invisible moments that nobody else will ever see. The dangerous person is not the loudest person in the room. The dangerous person is the one who cannot be manipulated, who cannot be baited into emotional reactions, who cannot be distracted by applause, who does not need strangers to believe in a dream before he believes in it himself. That kind of person moves differently. He speaks differently. Sometimes he doesn't speak at all, and that is exactly why he wins. Over the next few minutes, you are not going to hear motivational advice. You are going to uncover 7 Stoic principles that shaped emperors, philosophers, warriors, and men whose names survived centuries while louder people disappeared into history. These are not theories to admire. They are disciplines to practice. Ignore them, and your emotions will continue controlling your future. Master them, and your silence will become something people can never predict and never defeat. Let's begin. Principle 1. Silence is not weakness, it is invisible power. Somewhere in your life, there is a person who believes they know exactly how to control you. They know which words make you angry, which criticism keeps you awake at night, which disrespect is enough to make you defend yourself. Every emotional reaction you give them becomes information. Every argument becomes a map. Every explanation teaches them where your weaknesses live. The greatest mistake is not losing your temper. The greatest mistake is teaching people how to steal your peace. Marcus Aurelius left behind one sentence that has survived nearly 2,000 years because human nature has never changed. The best revenge is not to become like your enemy. Read that again. He didn't say destroy them. He didn't say embarrass them. He didn't say prove them wrong. He said something far more difficult. Refuse to become the kind of person they wanted you to become. Because the moment another person controls your emotions, they have already won a battle you never realized you were fighting. Imagine someone insults you in front of other people. Your heartbeat rises. Your mind instantly begins writing the perfect response. You want everyone in the room to know that you're smarter, stronger, impossible to disrespect. In that moment, your ego whispers, "Answer now." But wisdom whispers something completely different. If your peace can be stolen with a sentence, was it ever really yours? That single question changes everything. The strongest people are rarely the fastest to react. Watch a mountain during the fiercest storm. The wind screams, the rain crashes against it, thunder shakes the sky. Yet the mountain never argues with the storm. It doesn't try to prove its strength. It simply remains exactly where it is. Eventually the storm leaves, but the mountain remains. That is what Stoic silence looks like. It is not pretending you feel nothing. It is feeling the anger, feeling the disappointment, feeling the humiliation, and still refusing to let those emotions choose your next action. Anyone can stay calm when life is easy. Real discipline begins when your emotions are begging you to speak, and your wisdom quietly tells you to wait. Epictetus understood this better than almost anyone who ever lived. Before becoming one of history's greatest Stoic teachers, he lived as a slave. He knew what humiliation felt like. He knew what injustice looked like. Yet he taught something that still unsettles people today. It is not events that disturb us, but the meaning we attach to them. The insult is only sound. The criticism is only air moving through another person's mouth. It becomes a wound only after your mind decides to carry it. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. How many hours of your life have been stolen by words spoken by people who probably forgot them the next morning? How many nights have you lost replaying conversations that existed nowhere except inside your own head? How much energy has been wasted trying to convince people who had already decided not to understand you? Every minute spent fighting for someone else's approval is a minute stolen from becoming the person who never needed it. There is another truth that almost nobody talks about. When you react instantly, people stop respecting your emotions and start predicting them. They learn exactly which buttons to press. They know how to pull your attention away from your purpose. They don't need to defeat you anymore. They simply need to distract you. Silence breaks that pattern. The moment people can no longer predict your reaction, they lose the ability to manipulate it. Your calmness becomes uncertainty. Your patience becomes pressure. Your refusal to react forces the other person to sit alone with the very emotions they wanted you to carry instead. That is why silence feels so uncomfortable at first. Your ego believes every unanswered insult is a defeat, but your character understands something your ego never will. Not every battle deserves a soldier. Some battles exist only to steal your focus from the life you were supposed to build. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, don't ask yourself how to win the argument. Ask yourself a far more dangerous question. Will this matter 1 year from today, or am I about to trade my peace for 10 seconds of satisfaction? Most of the time, you'll discover something remarkable. The greatest victory is often the one nobody ever sees, because while everyone else is busy proving themselves, you are quietly becoming someone who no longer needs to. Principle 2. The deepest mind is the one that can sit alone with a thought. Most people don't think. They react, they repeat, they defend, they borrow opinions from strangers, and then they call that thinking. But real thinking is painfully slow. It demands silence. It demands loneliness. It demands the courage to question the very beliefs that make your ego feel safe. That is why so few people ever become truly dangerous, because the modern world is terrified of silence. The moment a room becomes quiet, someone reaches for a phone. The moment a difficult question appears, someone searches for someone else's answer. The moment uncertainty arrives, people rush toward noise because noise feels safer than truth. But truth has always lived in silence. Marcus Aurelius never escaped into distraction when life became unbearable. Imagine him for a moment, an emperor surrounded by war, betrayal inside his own government, disease spreading through his empire, thousands of lives depending on every decision he made. No podcasts, no social media, no endless opinions telling him what to think. Only one man, one candle, one journal, and a mind forced to confront itself. That is where Meditations was born, not inside comfort, inside unbearable responsibility. The world remembers Marcus Aurelius because he first learned to rule the one kingdom no emperor could escape: his own mind. Most people believe intelligence means having answers. The Stoics believed intelligence meant asking better questions. When something goes wrong, don't ask, "Who did this to me?" Ask, "Why did this disturb me so deeply?" Those two questions create two completely different lives. The first makes you a victim. The second makes you a student. And students always outgrow victims. Epictetus said something almost impossible to accept when your emotions are loud. No man is free if he is not master of himself. Read that slowly. Freedom is not money. Freedom is not status. Freedom is not having everyone respect you. Freedom is reaching a place where another person's opinion no longer decides the atmosphere inside your own mind. That is the rarest kind of freedom on earth. Here is a truth that most people spend their entire lives running from. The loudest voice inside your head usually isn't yours. It belongs to teachers who underestimated you, parents who criticized you, friends who laughed at your dreams, enemies you defeated years ago, people who are no longer present. Yet they continue speaking through your own thoughts every single day. That is why silence feels uncomfortable, because when the world finally becomes quiet, you are forced to meet the voices you've been avoiding for years. Most people escape before that meeting ever happens. They scroll, they watch, they argue, they consume. Anything except sitting alone long enough to hear themselves honestly. But every philosopher, every great leader, every extraordinary builder passed through that uncomfortable silence. Because wisdom is never downloaded, it is discovered. Think about a lake. When the water is constantly disturbed, you cannot see the bottom. Throw another stone. Nothing becomes clearer. Throw 10 more. The reflection disappears completely. Now imagine waiting. No movement, no panic, no force. Slowly, the surface becomes perfectly still. Suddenly, what was invisible becomes obvious. Your mind works exactly the same way. A restless mind cannot recognize truth. It can only recognize urgency, and urgency has destroyed more lives than ignorance ever has. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. Think about that. How many disasters never actually happened? How many conversations ended differently than your anxious mind predicted? How many sleepless nights were spent fighting futures that never arrived? The untrained mind manufactures suffering faster than reality ever could. That is why Stoicism is not the art of controlling the world. It is the art of refusing to become a prisoner of your own imagination. So here is your practice. Tonight, do something that almost nobody does anymore. Sit alone. No music, no phone, no conversation, no distraction. Just 30 minutes with your own thoughts. At first, your mind will resist. It will search for noise. It will invent reasons to leave. Stay anyway, because somewhere beneath all that mental chaos, there is a version of you that already knows what your next move should be. It has always known. You simply haven't been quiet enough to hear it. And remember this, the deepest minds are never the busiest minds. They are the quietest, because only a quiet mind can hear the truth, before the rest of the world finally catches up. Principle 3. The mind that cannot question itself will always be controlled by the world. Most people spend their entire lives studying other people, but almost no one studies themselves. They know exactly who betrayed them, who disappointed them, who never believed in them, yet they cannot answer a far more important question. Why do the same problems keep returning in different forms? Marcus Aurelius understood that the greatest enemy is rarely standing in front of you. More often, he is hiding inside your own habits, your pride, your assumptions, your need to always be right. A man who cannot challenge his own thinking will spend his life fighting shadows, believing the world is against him, while the real prison exists inside his own mind. Think about your last argument. Before the first word was spoken, your mind had already decided what the other person meant. Before they finished their sentence, you were already preparing your response instead of listening. That is how the ego works. It does not search for truth. It searches for evidence that it was right all along. Epictetus warned that people are disturbed not by reality, but by the judgments they make about reality. The insult is real, but the story you build around it is your own creation. The rejection is real, but the belief that it means you are unworthy is something your mind invented. The day you learn to separate facts from the stories your ego tells, you stop reacting to life, and you finally begin seeing it clearly. Every night, before sleep, the Stoics performed a quiet trial, not to punish themselves, but to expose themselves. They asked questions that most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Where did my ego speak louder than my wisdom? Where did fear disguise itself as logic? Where did I blame someone else because accepting responsibility was too painful? Those questions have no audience, no applause, no validation, but they slowly build something far more valuable than confidence. They build clarity, and clarity is dangerous, because once you truly see yourself, excuses lose their power forever. This is why deep thinkers are so rare. Looking outward is effortless. Looking inward demands courage. It is easier to criticize another person's character than to admit your own impatience. Easier to complain about betrayal than to confront the trust you gave too easily. Easier to blame the world than to rebuild yourself. But the moment you become brutally honest with yourself, something extraordinary happens. The world loses its ability to control you, because the man who has already faced the truth about himself cannot be broken by the opinions of anyone else. Principle 4. The future is never destroyed in one moment. It is quietly traded away, one decision at a time. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly becomes weak. No one loses their discipline in a single day. No one destroys their character with one mistake. It happens so slowly, so quietly, that the mind never notices it. One excuse becomes a habit. One habit becomes an identity. One identity becomes a destiny. By the time people realize their life has changed, the transformation has already happened. This is why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that character is not built during extraordinary moments. It is built in ordinary ones, in the tiny decisions that nobody applauds, the choices nobody records, the battles nobody else even knows you fought. Every day, your future is asking one silent question. Who are you becoming while no one is watching? Look at a sculptor standing before a block of marble. To everyone else, it looks like nothing is changing. One strike of the hammer seems meaningless. Another strike changes almost nothing. Weeks pass, and people wonder if any progress is being made at all. But then one day the statue appears, and everyone calls it a masterpiece. What they never saw were the thousands of invisible blows that made the final moment possible. Your character is carved exactly the same way. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, patience over anger, silence over proving yourself, honesty over convenience, you strike another piece of unnecessary stone away. The world only notices the finished statue, but wisdom knows that greatness was created long before anyone was looking. Most people are imprisoned by what feels good for the next 5 minutes. They eat what satisfies today's craving and ignore tomorrow's body. They chase today's approval and sacrifice tomorrow's respect. They speak because silence feels uncomfortable, then spend years repairing the damage caused by one emotional sentence. The Stoics understood something our generation desperately needs to remember. Every impulse offers pleasure now and sends the bill later. The mind that cannot delay satisfaction will eventually become a servant to every desire that knocks on its door. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel like doing. Freedom is having the strength to say no to yourself when your emotions are demanding yes. So before every decision, before every reaction, before every word leaves your mouth, pause for one honest question. If I repeat this choice every day for the next 5 years, who will I become? That single question has the power to change an entire life. Because the future is never created tomorrow, it is created today, quietly, repeatedly, one invisible decision at a time. And while everyone else is searching for one dramatic moment that will change everything, the Stoic is doing something far more powerful. He is changing the small decisions that eventually change everything. Principle 5. The strongest person in the room is the one who no longer needs the room. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must answer a question that nobody else can answer for them. If no one applauded me, would I still become the person I dream of becoming? Most people never stop long enough to ask it. They build careers to impress strangers, buy things they never needed, speak words they don't even believe, and spend years chasing validation from people whose opinions will disappear the moment someone more interesting walks into the room. They call it success, but it is only another form of dependence. Marcus Aurelius warned himself never to measure his worth by the applause of the crowd, because the crowd changes its heroes as quickly as it changes its moods. A man who builds his identity on other people's approval places his entire life on a foundation he does not control. The moment the applause ends, so does his confidence. This is why the Stoics believed the most dangerous addiction was never money, pleasure, or comfort. It was recognition. Recognition feels harmless because it arrives disguised as encouragement. One compliment becomes an expectation. One successful post becomes pressure to create another. One moment of admiration quietly turns into a lifetime of performing for an invisible audience. Without realizing it, you stop asking, "Is this true to my character?" and start asking, "Will people like this?" That single shift is where freedom begins to die. From that moment on, your emotions belong to the crowd. Their praise lifts you, their silence breaks you, their criticism controls you. And the cruelest part is that they don't even know they're controlling your life. Look at the oak tree standing alone in the middle of an open field. It does not grow because someone is watching. It does not stretch its roots deeper because someone praised yesterday's growth. Through storms, through winters, through years when no one notices its existence, it continues becoming stronger beneath the surface. That is why it survives winds that destroy everything around it. Human character grows exactly the same way. The deepest roots are always invisible. The greatest transformations happen long before anyone can see them. The person obsessed with being noticed grows upward too quickly, but the person obsessed with becoming better grows downward first. And when the inevitable storms arrive, one falls because he built his life on attention, while the other remains standing because he built his life on principles. So ask yourself something that your ego will desperately try to avoid. Who are you when nobody is looking? Because that person, not the one on display, not the one explaining, not the one performing, is your real identity. If you can work without recognition, endure without sympathy, improve without applause, and remain faithful to your purpose even when the world forgets your name, then you have discovered something that very few people ever possess: You no longer need the room to believe in you, because you have finally learned to stand in complete agreement with yourself. And the moment that happens, the world loses its greatest weapon against you. Principle 6. Protect your vision before you reveal it. Every great creation begins in silence. Before a cathedral touches the sky, it exists as a fragile idea in the mind of one architect. Before an empire is built, it is nothing more than a decision made in complete solitude. Before a man transforms his life, there is a season where nothing about him looks different from the outside. That is the stage where most dreams die, not because they were impossible, but because they were exposed before they became strong enough to survive. Marcus Aurelius never announced the man he intended to become. He became that man first, because he understood that the earliest version of any purpose is like a small flame. It does not need attention, it needs protection. Most people make one mistake that feels completely harmless. The moment they decide to change their life, they immediately tell everyone. They announce the business before the first customer exists. They speak about discipline before they have earned it. They describe the future version of themselves as if speaking it aloud somehow makes it real. For a few moments, the compliments feel like progress. People smile. They encourage you. They tell you how proud they are, and without realizing it, your brain accepts their admiration as a substitute for the work itself. You receive the emotional reward before paying the physical price. That is why so many dreams disappear after the excitement of the announcement. The applause arrives, but the discipline never does. There is another danger that is even more difficult to recognize. The people who love you are not always the people who strengthen you. Sometimes they hand you their own fears and call it advice. They say, "Be realistic." They remind you of everyone who failed before you. They ask whether you're sure, whether it's worth the risk, whether you should choose the safer path instead. They are not trying to destroy your future. They are trying to protect you from pain. But people can only protect you according to the size of their courage, not yours. If they never believed they could become extraordinary, they will struggle to believe that you can. Their fear quietly enters your mind, and one sentence spoken in love can become a prison you carry for years. The Stoics understood that strength grows the same way roots grow beneath an ancient tree. No one applauds roots because no one can see them. Yet without them, the tallest tree is nothing more than a promise waiting to collapse. Your discipline, your routines, your private victories, your lonely mornings. These are the roots of your future. Build them where no audience exists. Let people underestimate you. Let them assume nothing is happening, because there is an unmatched freedom in becoming powerful where nobody is looking. And one day, when the results finally become impossible to hide, you will never have to explain yourself. Your life will speak with a voice far louder than your words ever could. Principle 7. Master your mind, or someone else will. Every single day, someone is trying to occupy your mind. Not your house, not your money, not even your time, your mind. Because whoever controls your attention eventually begins controlling your decisions. Advertisements compete for it. Social media feeds feed on it. News headlines provoke it. Arguments steal it. People's opinions invade it. And the frightening part is that most people never notice the invasion. They believe they are making independent choices, when in reality they are simply acting out ideas that were quietly planted in them by a world that profits from distraction. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger long before technology existed. That is why he constantly reminded himself to guard his own thoughts, because he knew that a mind left unprotected never remains empty. It is always occupied by something else. Think about how easily another person's mood becomes your mood. One careless comment ruins your entire day. One rejection makes you question your worth. One criticism echoes inside your head long after the person who spoke it has forgotten it completely. Why? Because the greatest prison is not outside you. It is allowing another human being to rent space inside your mind without paying the price. Every hour you spend replaying what someone said is an hour of your life handed over to them. They continue living peacefully while you remain trapped inside a conversation that exists only in your imagination. That is not strength. That is silent slavery, and the cruelest chains are always the ones you cannot see. The Stoics believed that every thought should stand at the gate of the mind, like a stranger asking for permission to enter. Before accepting it, they asked one simple question: does this make me stronger, or does it quietly weaken me? Imagine how different your life would become if every fear, every insult, every opinion, every temptation had to answer that question before it was allowed inside. Most thoughts would never make it through the gate. They survive only because we welcome them without examination. Seneca warned that a mind without discipline becomes its own executioner. It creates enemies where none exist, predicts disasters that never happen, and turns temporary pain into permanent suffering simply because it refuses to question itself. So from this day forward, become ruthless about what enters your mind. Guard it the way an emperor guards the gates of his kingdom, not because you fear the world, but because you understand the value of what you are protecting. Your attention is your life in its purest form. The world doesn't need another loud person. It needs someone who can stay calm when everyone else is losing control. Someone who can remain disciplined when everyone else chooses comfort. Someone who keeps building while everyone else keeps talking. So from this day forward, speak less, think deeper, react slower, build quietly, and let your results make the noise your mouth never had to, because one day, people won't ask how you became so strong. They'll simply wonder why they never saw it coming. If this video changed the way you think, make sure to subscribe, because this is only the beginning of your Stoic journey. Until next time, stay silent, stay disciplined, and become impossible to shake. Wherever your attention goes, your character follows. Wherever your character goes, your destiny quietly follows behind it. Protect your mind, and you will not need to control the world. Because the man who has complete authority over his own thoughts has already achieved a freedom that no enemy, no failure, and no passing storm can ever take away.